country has a right to be worried. You know, I mean, 14% unemployment, the economy on the verge of collapse also, but, you know, you'll hear a recurring theme in our humor, and that is there's a bright side to everything, and that's sort of the theme that Josh and I alluded to. That's how we view the world, and that's where we find the inspiration for our comedy. You'll hear that as recurring theme as we try to find the positives in life. But like just this very situation, doing comedy virtually isn't our preferred forum for comedy, but it's all we have. But everything's going virtual. Even going to the doctor is virtual. I actually dialed into a teledoc appointment yesterday. I had to get checked for a hernia. So if you can, I actually had to stand over the phone and turn my head and cough. It actually turns out I'm at the doctor. I was just signed up for some pervert webcam. So you could look at that and say, well, that's a negative, but you have to look at the positive sides of this. I mean, on the positive, I'm now a nominee for Best New Performer at the AVN Awards. And I actually have 3,500 new followers on Instagram. They're mostly older Asian men. So, I mean, there's a bit of a language barrier, but, you know. So let's get into some comedy.
Hey, everybody, this is...
Sorry, Josh, I was just going to say, I was going to say, you know, before we kick off, there's so much confusion out there. And as Josh and I were going around, like, all right, what do we talk just about COVID, or do we talk about the news or contemporary? What do we talk about? The collective decision we had is that there's some confusion out there. Even the barrage of news about staying closed or opening the economy, it's confusing. I'll tell you that just personally, I changed my opinion on what the government should do, probably more than Carol Baskin changes her story about where her ex-husband might be. Yeah, we're going to go down that road. Everybody's actually talking about China in this COVID thing. And China didn't have anything to gain by creating this in a laboratory. If you're not pointing the finger at the Tiger King, I think you underestimate the determination of a gay meth addict with a vendetta. If you haven't caught the news, it's no coincidence that Carol Baskin was actually stopped by customs coming into the United States with a package that said giant murderous bees on it. So if you're not laughing now, this is as good as it's going to get. So we see some folks laughing there. I appreciate it, even if it's feigned. It doesn't matter. So Josh, I know you have a couple things to say before we just get into our bits. I'll turn it over to you, brother.
Hey, everybody. My name is Josh. I'm the other half of Entreprenerds Comedy. I want to say thank you all for tuning in. This is a big deal for us. This is actually our first global pandemic comedy tour. That is together. We've separately, I know Jon had done a bunch of stuff during the H1N1 outbreak, and I certainly had my success during SARS. But together, this is the first time that we've gotten together, and certainly the first time we've done anything on Zoom. And I was, you know, the whole Zoom thing adds a whole nother dynamic to this. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, and I thought about some of the positives, and I thought if you've ever had an inclination to heckle a comedian, well, tonight is your night. Tonight is just as much your night as it is our night. So we want you to be brutal. We want you to lean in and just be as nasty and mean as you want. Pay no attention to the fact that your mic will be muted the entire time. But you know, when we first decided we were going to do this, I contacted some other comedians that I know, and by other comedians I mean Jon, and I said, hey, I've got this concern. I'm concerned I'm going to joke, and there's going to be nothing but silence. This long, drawn-out pause and silence afterwards. And he was great. He was great. He reassured me. He said, fear not. This will be no different than when you've told jokes to people face-to-face. It will be the exact same reaction. So he was awesome. He made me feel a lot better about that. And we'd gone back and forth, and we discussed which jokes, which stories we're going to go over. And there was one that I wanted Jon. I kept trying to convince him to start with, because it's one that, you know, it talks about the military. And it talks that I think is a funny story. So, Jon, I think you know which one I'm talking about. If you could go ahead and kick it off of that.
Sure. And thanks to my wife, who's about 30 feet away in the bedroom, for telling me that my mic sounded like shit. Um, Even on a Zoom call with the other people, you're not afraid to continue to stick that knife in and turn it. So the story Josh was talking about is first of all, we love having vets on here. We love being able to do some bits with some military supporters, because there's some commonality, whether you're in the military or you weren't. There's some things that we can all laugh about. And one of my favorite stories about being in the military is this one. And what I think what makes it great is that it's 100% true. So people are, let me preface this by saying people are typically wowed by the Navy SEAL thing, and a Navy SEAL comedian. It's sort of an enigma, and there's a little bit of a wow factor with that. But not always. And I'll tell you a story. I was out at a bar one time many years ago, and I met a girl at this bar, and we exchanged our information, and I invited her to come out to dinner the next night. And so I didn't, the first meeting, I didn't tell her what I did. I only said that I was in the Navy. And I kind of wanted to save that nugget, because, typically what happens is, if you tell somebody you're a Navy SEAL, then, it's like a magic wand. Their panties just fall off, and and it creates a whole awkward thing if you're still in the bar. So I wanted to save that nugget for, I see all the ladies shaking their heads. It's all right. My style in here. Listen, we're in a safe space. So, totally true story. So this girl and I, we go out to dinner the next night on our first date, and I'm waiting for her for an opportunity for me to finally say, thank you for asking. This is what I do. So it comes to that point in the evening where she finally says, so what do you do in the Navy? And at this point, like I'm now chomping at because I feel like what's about to trend on Twitter is like all across Twitter, like John's about to get laid is going to be the #1 trend in Twitter. It's here we go. We're ready to launch. And she says, so what do you do in the Navy? And I said, well, it's funny you ask. I'm a Navy SEAL. And no shit. She says, is that good? Now, to put this in context, I was so unprepared for her to say, is that good? When I say I'm a Navy SEAL, that to flip the script, that would be the equivalent of me saying, so what do you do for work? And she says, oh, I get paid to do Kegel exercises and wax my bikini. And me responding with, is that good? And so she says this, and there's no recovery from this, right? You can't be like, yeah, it's fucking awesome. You're welcome, America. So I did what any guy did whose self-esteem was now hovering in the negative digits. I said, yeah, actually it's really good. And I went on for about 20 minutes and explained that, I said, it's fantastic, actually. I said, you know those big numbers on the sides of the ship? Totally true. You know those big numbers on the sides of the ship? I do those. And I went on about the next 20 minutes explaining in great detail about how I was an artist, but I really could only work in large block numbers. And I had all kinds of aspirations to work in the great palette of colors, but I was sort of limited to just shades gray. And the look on her face just said it all. It's the look on her face as I'm telling the story, as if he's sitting across from me, was, if God, please let somebody call right now and say one of my family members have been horribly disfigured in a car accident, anything to get out of this conversation. We went on through the conversation, and she endured. And so the next day, the girl I'd go date with, she calls a girlfriend. Again, still totally true. And this is why Josh and I love telling this story. The next day, this girl, that my date, she calls a girlfriend. She says, hey, I went on a date last night with that Navy guy. And her girlfriend says, oh, what's he do in the Navy? And noting, my date says, some sort of Navy animal. And her girlfriend says, a Navy SEAL? And my date says, yeah, they paint the big numbers on the side of the ship. So I will tell you that I ended up going on more dates with this guy, and it was her gullibility was really cute, was very endearing, but it was the fact that what I did when she finally learned what I did was wholly unimpressive to her. And I will tell you that 15 years and 3 kids later, she is still just as unimpressed with me. And just in case, and I'm pretty sure she has groomed the kids this way, but just in case I start to actually feel like I'm kind of a cool dad, she has ensured, or the kids have at least have ensured that that they will fix that. And I'll tell you another quick story. I went away on reserve duty. I'm still a reservist, and I went away on reserve duty about a year ago. And my then 8-year-old, he says, I go away for about 5 days, and I had this helmet cam on, and we were jumping out of helicopters, and it was as cool. I mean, it's what these kids pay money to subscribe to video games to watch, and here your old man's going to do it. So I come back, and I have this helmet cam footage, and a totally true story. And I said, hey, bud, hey, you want to see this really cool stuff that Dad was doing? And he's like, yeah, sure. You know, whatever, Dad. He's playing Minecraft. I can interrupt his Minecraft so he can do this. So I show him the helmet cam footage. It says, cool. And I was like, just cool? He's like, yeah. He's like, but you know what else is cool, Dad? True story. He's like, you know what Tyler's dad does? Tell me, son. Tyler's dad, he works at Wawa, and he brought in 2 coupons, or he brought in a coupon for 2 free hoagies to every kid in the classroom this week while you're gone. You know, buddy, I you know what? You're right. I can't compete with that. Hey, by the way, be sure to thank Tyler, or be sure to have Tyler thank his dad for freedom on Monday, you asshole. That's one of my favorite stories, Josh. I don't know if you had one teed up, or I don't know what you had next, but there's that one that's sort of related to you know the one I'm talking about, the about kids keeping you grounded.
Yeah. So the thing about video games now and what you see on TV is they're always talking about Navy SEALs, and you know, I grew up, all I wanted to be was a soldier, right? I didn't have to be part of some elite unit or anything like that, a Green Beret, or I just grew up and I wanted to be a soldier. So my son, this is a couple of Halloweens ago, he comes up to me and he stops me and he looks me in my eyes. And I swear the kid was like looking at my soul. And he says, Dad, I want to be a military sniper for Halloween. And I was taken back a little bit. I mean, no one wants their 6-year-old to tell them that they, you know, plan on sneaking up on somebody and they want to take headshots from a mile away. But you know, I was in the military. I'm a patriot. I said, okay. And I went out and I got him a military sniper costume. Now, in that costume is something called a ghillie suit. And for the few of you that aren't military snipers, I'll explain what that means. A ghillie suit is a suit that makes you look like you have like leaves and branches. It covers you from head to toe. It's kind of like the ultimate in camouflage. But because of today's society, it doesn't come with like a toy gun. You can't have a toy gun. So he puts this thing on and he looks at me. He says, Dad, do I look like a sniper? I said, no, you look like a shrub. If you'd asked me if you look like a Japanese boxwood, I would have told him he nailed it. So I didn't know what to do. I just explained to him. I said, look, man, if you're going to pull off this sniper thing, you're going to have to just walk around everywhere in your ghillie suit, picking things up and mumbling under your breath. I'm in a world of shit when I get back to base. The thing the kids do now in Halloween is at school they have Halloween parades where the kids, they put on these costumes, right? And they just walk around and they show their parents. So I go and I watch my son, and kids are walking by, but not my son. He's actually skipping. And it's at this point I realize he has no idea what a sniper is, not a clue. It is probably the least sniper-like thing you could possibly do, the old skipping. So I don't know. I guess in his head, it was just like, you're just really good at hide and go seek. But, you know, John and I, we talk about humor and we talk about being in the military, and I can say honestly that the military has helped shape my sense of humor. And by shape, I mean it made it really, really dark. See, I dropped out of I dropped out of college pretty early, and I was never part of a fraternity. I didn't understand what that whole hazing thing was. But hazing in the military was, for me, was much, much different. See, my hazing included like weapons of mass destruction, right? So let me explain. I guarded ICBM missiles in the Air Force. That's intercontinental ballistic missiles. These things are designed to take out entire cities. And I show up on day one after training, and I'm handed what I'm told is a Geiger counter. So if you don't know what a Geiger counter is, that's to test radiation. And they point me to a large white cone on the facility, and they tell me that it's a warhead that they're getting ready to work on, and that we have to test it every couple hours to make sure it's not leaking radiation. So I take what I thought was a Geiger counter, and I walked over to this thing, and it turns out they gave me a magnetometer, which is like a metal detector wand. And they had me test what I thought was a warhead, but was actually just a white cone antenna. So of course, as I'm waving this thing above the antenna, it's screaming, it's making all kinds of noise. So I run back inside. It's my first day, and I said, I don't know what it's supposed to do, but this thing was screaming at me the entire time. And these 6 grown men donned full chemical warfare gear to include charcoal suits and gas masks, had me stripped down naked and shower for an hour in the hottest water I could possibly take, and write letters to my loved ones because they weren't sure I was going to make it. So I wasn't in a fraternity. My hazing did not include paddling or forced to drink, a bunch of shots. It included thinking I might be dying from radiation poisoning. So that's about as dark as it gets. And if you don't learn to adapt and get funny going through something like that, then it's going to be a long 4 years for you. Another thing the military does, they give these guys, I'm 19, 20 years old, and they give you these really expensive toys, right? These things that they cost millions of dollars, and they're giving these things to really teenagers and guys in their early 20s. I mean, our frontal cortex isn't even fully developed till we're 25. So I'm working at a military gate, just waving cars through, and it's late at night, and they drop off this machine. You might have seen them at TSA. It's one of these things where they have a piece of fabric and they wipe down your bags and they put it in a machine, and it can detect trace amounts of explosives or maybe narcotics. And they put this machine in front of me and they said, listen, don't touch this. You're not qualified on it. Don't touch this. Which is the dumbest thing you can possibly do to a 21-year-old at a gate when he's by himself. So about 3 a.m, I'm bored out of my mind, and 18-wheeler comes through. It's got 2 guys in it, and I pull out this canister that was next to the machine. It's got these little things of fabric, and I put them on a wand, and I start wiping this guy's truck down. And I go ahead and wave him through as I'm sticking this thing in the machine because I have no idea how it works. And as they're about 100 feet down the road, it starts flashing red and just making all kinds of noise. It says, test positive for dynamite and cocaine. Now, I got to tell you, working a military gate is about as boring as it can get until you introduce dynamite and cocaine. At that point, I was about as excited as you can possibly be. So I radioed ahead to some heavily armed individuals who were about as bored as I was. I said, hey guys, it's a truck coming to you with dynamite and cocaine. So they were pretty excited, and they blocked off the road and pulled these guys out at gunpoint and laid them down on the street. And it's at this time I picked up that canister that had that piece of fabric, and on the front of it, it said, calibration test canister should come up positive for dynamite and cocaine. Now this is another reason I love the military. I called these guys up on my crappy flip phone back then. I said, guys, I think I really fucked up. It's supposed to come up positive for dynamite and cocaine. And all I got on the other end was a whole lot of laughter. And they said, we're just going with it. So the bad news is these guys ended up being arrested. It turns out they've got warrants. They actually had active warrants out of Baltimore, both of them. The good news is it wasn't for dynamite or cocaine. And And also, clearly that machine's working and was calibrated perfectly. So there's a couple positives in this whole thing. But John, I'm gonna flip it back over to you.
See the silver linings, right? You're kind of a hero. You right? You calibrated the machine accurately. You did what you're supposed to do, even untested on.
That's what I'm here for.
You know, when Josh and I were talking about what jokes to tell and things like that, and I've told people on stage that I was a SEAL, but I'm still fairly uncomfortable saying that. It's just an awkward thing to say. And even though I do bits about it, it's still an awkward thing to tell people. And it's not because of some code of secrets or something. It's mostly because I ruined their Hugh Jack image of what a SEAL actually looks like. And so if you think about Hollywood, Mark Wahlberg, super good looking. He played a SEAL in Lone Survivor, and Bradley Cooper played one in American Sniper. And Chris Pratt, the fat kid from Parks and Rec, actually got super ripped and played in Zero Dark 30. And then there's me. So for any single lady that might be on here, might be on dating, I'm actually, I hate to burst your bubble, I'm actually the unfiltered Snapchat image of what a SEAL actually looks like. If you see a good looking guy, this is a PSA for you. If you're on a dating website and you see a good looking guy with on Tinder with Navy SEAL and you swipe right, this is actually what's showing up on your date. A middle-aged bald guy with a dad bod. So I'm still in. I tell you, I actually have been on a hostage rescue mission before, where we actually rescued the hostage, and I took my balaclava off, and she was like, oh, she's like, you know, I mean, I didn't like being held by ISIS, but I was kind of expecting, you know, I mean, I get it. Like, I know, look at me. I like God put me together using spare parts. He was like, let's see, I've got like gangly body and I've got this abnormally large head. And you know what? This guy's totally fucked. You know, I better make him kind of tough and sort of funny if he's got any chance in life. So, you know, self-deprecation is one of the things that I think you learn, and that humility is something you learn in the military, because there's always people who are better, faster, smarter than you, and you learn to embrace being surrounded by them, and you just learn to love being surrounded by people who are smarter than you. That's the good part. The bad part about being in the military, or one of them, is that it makes you a little bit numb to the differences and the kind of things that matter a lot on the outside. That diversity that we brace and that we tap in the corporate sector or out on the outside is something that they essentially nullify to a large degree in the military, right? They really don't care where you came from or what kind of background they only care that you are aligned to the mission and you are focused on the objective. You're black, white, male, female, it doesn't matter, right? As long as you are working together as a cohesive unit. And that's an awesome part. The bad part about that is that when you get out, you might be a little numb or insensitive, or the perception of being insensitive to those differences that matter on the outside. Right after I had gotten out off active duty, I invited over a friend, and I was going to play the board game Battleship, and he's a Japanese friend. That's not the joke yet. I can see people laughing. Yeah, for those of you who are shaking your head, yeah, that's not the joke yet. So I invited over a Japanese friend of mine, and we were going to play the board game Battleship, and so he goes first, and he guesses like B9, and his red pin just drops in my in my ocean. It doesn't get anything, and then I fly an airplane over, and I drop an atom bomb, and I erase his entire fleet, and he got offended. Right. And so for those of you laughing, right, that was, I started laughing, and he was offended, and, you know, coming right out of the military, I didn't get it. I mean, to be honest, I kind of thought you should have seen it coming after the first two. So that's a thinking man's joke. It's all right. For those of you who are still letting it fester a little bit. All right, about another minute or so, you'll get it. I actually do. I love writing that provocative humor. I love writing these provocative and off color humor, because I think that's part of what makes us able to laugh at our differences and really actually bring closer together. I don't have a racist bone in my body, but I have found myself in positions where I appear racist. And I'll tell you this story. It's one of my favorite stories. My wife and I wanted to take our kids on a disgruntled veteran humor. Exactly. My wife and I wanted to take our kids on a ski trip, and there's so many options out there for skiing, to go and skiing, that we said, you know what, let's talk to a travel agent. They'll be able to help us. So we go over to the travel agent's office, and we explained to her, like, kids are pretty little, so we're not looking for the Alps. We're looking for something that's fun for kids, but also has something in it for us as well. She says, not to worry, I have the perfect resort for you. She says, I have a resort. It has 2 separate mountains. And for those of you who've never been skiing, ski slopes are denoted by a color and a shape that tells you the level of difficulty of the slope. So she says, I have the perfect mountain. It has 2 separate mountains, or a perfect resort has 2 separate mountains. On one mountain are the easy and the medium runs. They have the green circle and the blue square. On a totally separate mountain are the hard slopes, the black diamonds. And I hear somebody come into the travel agents behind me, and without paying any attention to who had come in, I happened to say to the travel agent at that time, I said, oh, good, they keep all the blacks on a separate mountain. And yeah, just hold on, it actually gets worse. So I happened to look behind me, and I saw a very perturbed African-American couple, and understanding that I had been taken out of context, I tried to clarify. I said, no, you don't understand. They're dangerous. I try to keep my kids away from them. So still hadn't learned my lesson, still trying to dig myself out of the hole. I said, no, I'm talking about the slopes. And the Asian couple behind them said, excuse me? So thank you, Hillary. Not to worry. I explained everything to them, and we worked it out, and all good. We're actually having them over for dinner this weekend. We're going to play some Battleship together. I love provocative humor that really gets us uncomfortable, but not one to allow any one marginalized population to feel more marginalized than another. I'm actually writing a joke about an African-American female lesbian handicapped veteran, just so I can get all of the populations, all the demographics in one joke. Josh, we probably lost about a third of our audience at this point, so I guess I'll turn it over back to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm gonna try and talk to the few left here. So, one of the other benefits of being a vet is all the discounts you get, right? When you get out, whether it's Lowe's or Home Depot, and I just wanted one of those vacations, an all-inclusive vacation on a veterans discount. John, you've been on one of those all-inclusive resorts before?
I have not.
All right. Well, let me explain. An all-inclusive resort is a place. It's a place you go and you spend a lot of money to literally become the worst version of yourself possible. There's just a ton of drinking. It's nonstop drinking, and I like to drink. My wife, not so much. So for whatever reason, I feel like I gotta try and drink for the two of us. And every day I start getting like these judging eyes from the bartender about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And when you get judging eyes from a bartender at an all-inclusive resort, that's on a whole. That's like Charlie Sheen looking at you and telling you might want to slow it down a little bit. But it's, we took this extra money that we'd saved from getting the veterans discount, and we got something called the Butler's Package. And the Butler's Package is where they give you this phone, and they call it the Butler's phone, and you carry this thing around with you 24/7, and you can order whatever you want whenever you want it. But what I found was, like, day 3, you feel like a piece of shit for walking around with a butler's phone. And I felt like this, I would see the staff and I just wanted to make like this connection, right? Like this human connection. I just want to let them know, man, like I am no different than you. We're exactly the same. Minus I have a butler's package, but other than that, we're the same. And, and one day this young lady, she was in my room and she was cleaning up, and I walked in and she's just drenched in sweat. I said, now's my opportunity. I'm going to try and make this connection with her. And I said, excuse me, ma'am, it's a damn shame that they make you wear all those clothes while you're working. And this woman stopped what she was doing. She looked at me with just hatred in her eyes, as if to say, I get it's an all-inclusive, but it's not an all-inclusive. So that was my one experience on one of the all-inclusive resorts. John, let's talk about some post-military jobs. What are some of the things you did when you got out?
So, Josh, we were talking about all those stories, and I think one of my favorite stories is my my very first job that I had when I got out of the military. I'll tell you that being in special operations, you start to believe your own bullshit, and you start to believe you have skills that any company would die for. And so I got out of the military after my first stint, and I was applying for a number of jobs, and then after a period of time, after reality beat me over the head, I found myself working weekends as a wedding DJ. And in the list of things that was on my my bucket list to do after I got out, be James Bond, like Save America, things like that. Moonlight as a wedding DJ was not one of them. But we talked about humility, and that's part of what you come out of the military with, and it's always good to have moments where you have an opportunity to refresh that humility. And so there was the one seminal moment I had as a wedding DJ. I was feeling particularly low about how I had gotten there, and I was feeling low about, this is not where I thought I was going to be. And this is, again, true story. I was at a wedding, and a kid comes up to me, and I'm getting ready to put a record on the player. And the kid comes up and he says, "Hey, are you a Navy SEAL?" And I had to give him that. I said, "Hey, hold on one sec, bud." And I had to. I'll answer your second question in 1 second. All right. I put the record on, and I had to lean in and go, "All right, who's ready for the chicken dance?" And you have. Josh talked about finding the positives. I think I was at a turning point in my life where I was like, I have to make some changes. Either I need to, I need to make changes and get on a better run, or, like a crushed bottle of Ambien and a Hit the Jack were sounding pretty enticing at that point. But the low point, or the positive to it, that that kid's question actually made me realize that I could actually go a lot lower, and I actually came out of there deciding to make some positive changes. Josh, before I actually have a funny story about, I don't think we've rehearsed this one even, but I have a funny story about my business experience, but I actually want before, because we're kind of we're getting close to time. I want you to tell this story if you can, about your first job out, and just the absolute melee that was happening in your life at that time.
First of all, I got out. I was homeless for probably about 6 months. Well, I wasn't truly homeless. I got out, and there was I was at a base that was closing. So I just stayed and everybody left. I lived in a military barracks by myself for 6 months with a dog. I sat in a day room and drank beer every day. And a short stint, I was putting security doors, like big metal security doors in the ghettos of Sacramento. But that only lasted a short period of time. I actually decided I was going to move back. I was going to move back east. And if you don't mind, I'm going to tell that one because I think that's was part of my journey of getting out of the military. So I decided I'm going to drive across the United States in my Jeep with my dog. I'm going to camp out the whole way. And unfortunately, along the way, I ended up getting really, really sick, like flu sick, like so sick. I checked into a hotel and stayed there for a week. For 3 days, my dog shit on a carpet in the same hotel. And I was so sick, I couldn't even get up to do anything about it, kind of sick. So I can't say I didn't have any great jobs. I mean, I literally, I worked in a ghetto and I was homeless and stayed in a hotel. So I can't say that there was anything fantastic about it. But
weren't you pulled over driving home?
Oh,
am I making that?
I got pulled over on Christmas Eve on the border of Ohio. Now at this point, the top to my Jeep, it was a soft top, had in Oklahoma had torn off in a windstorm. So I drove the rest of the way in a North Face jacket with just my eyes showing and my dog in a negative 20-degree sleeping bag. And I got pulled over by the police, by a state trooper. And he comes up and he runs up he's got his gun out and he's pointing it at me. And I have no idea what's going on. And he makes eye contact with me and I take off my North Face and he says, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm confused. What do you mean?" He said, "I've been behind you for 20 minutes with my lights and sirens on the entire time." And with that, about 12 other state troopers came racing up, all ready to shoot me or my dog. But yeah, that was my story of getting out and coming back east.
I had, and we're getting close. I'll just wrap up with this one story. When you get out, so for those who don't know, I'm a leadership consultant now in the private sector. And the military, they build confidence in you and they make you believe you can do anything. And I was one of those guys. And I got out of the military and I believed now in hindsight, I reflect on with the business experience I have. I think back to when I first got out, I thought that I could do in anything. I thought just willpower and my strength of character would overcome any obstacles. And that's the great part about the military. The downside is that, operating in small units, it also gives you a false sense of how things work on the outside. A buddy of mine and I, we got out after I got out, after the wedding DJ thing, we decided we were going to open a business. We were looking for a business to purchase. And so we decided we're going to open a liquor store. We decided that was our next big venture. We're going to open a liquor store, and we went into one that was doing very well. We decided, we had at least enough business sense to recognize you can open your own, or you can find one that's operating, doing well, and you can go and talk to them. So we found one that was opening or that was doing well in a key location, and so we go in, and there's a Pakistani gentleman standing behind the counter. I said, "Hey, can I speak with the owner?" And he says, "You're speaking to him." I said, "We'd like to purchase your business." And he paused for a second and he said, "No." So understand that having come from very small unit environment, negotiation or business negotiation skills were not something that I had, but it's also not something that I recognized that I lacked. So he said no. And I said, "Hold on now. I think you want to sell." And he paused for a moment and he said, "No." So I was, again, unprepared for the negotiation to go this far. I had in my mind that's going to be the end of it. So I said, "You want to sell to us, or we're going to run you out of town." This is unfortunately, this is actually a true story. I said, you want to sell to us or we're going to run you out of town. Um, and then he kicked us and he threatened to call the police. So my mind, having come from a small unit environment, I thought, that like he might, like the way this negotiation goes, that we would go out back and we would fight about it. And then the winner would actually get to make the declaration about where we're going to go. But when I think back about how far I've come, my business skills and my ability to adapt to both the outside, to the civilian environment and the military environment, I reflect back on that moment and I realized that my approach to business negotiations, everything I knew about business negotiation, I learned from the bad guys on the A team in the 80s. The only thing that was missing about my situation was I said, you're going to sell to me or I'm going to run you out of town. An hour later, 4 degenerate veterans should have rolled up in a mod Ford Tempo and sprayed thousands of bullets until we left town unharmed. That was the only thing missing from my business negotiation skills. And with that, we're at a 6:22. So with that, Josh, I think I'm going to I'll close out on that one.
Yeah, I think we can probably sign off on that. We just want to say thanks to everybody letting us come on into your house for this short period of time, and hopefully we tried at least to put a couple of smiles on your faces. This is a difficult time for us all, and it's certainly doing a comedy show via Zoom is definitely it's an uphill battle. But thank you guys for all tuning in. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks to GPVN, thanks to Alex and for having us on. Thanks to Ashley, and be safe out there, not from COVID, but from murder hornets. So, Alex, with that, we're back over to you.
Well, let's give a round of applause virtually, everybody. Let's give it up, give it up, give it up. If I had a lighter, I would light one up for an encore, but I don't think I have one anymore. I have a glow stick. So that's all I have. So listen, I want to really thank, I'm glad we are the first ones to do this virtual tour. You know what? It's hard to do comedy. We talked about it. You guys nailed it. There's no doubt about it. We needed a good laugh, and what better way to get us going than really good dark humor? Why not add another layer to that for us? So it's good. I want to end by just saying, the military is the best time I never want to do again. So we wrapped that up with all the humor that you added. We are professionally disappointed at a young age, and I think that's probably where our humor comes from. And everybody use their traits properly when they get out. So with that, go ahead,
Alex. If I can, we'll just say, if you're looking for one more place to follow, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or on our website. It's Entreprenerds, NERDS Comedy, one word, Entreprenerds Comedy. We try on there and just put out some funny stuff just to maybe bring a smile to your day. So feel free to give us a like, a share. You can follow it. You can find us on killcliff.com as well under their podcast. And we appreciate you checking us out.
So we're going to share all that info. I appreciate the plug, Josh and John, for that, because we're going to be sharing all their information of how to follow them. Please share their stuff, guys. Let's continue their success and what they're doing. And out there, everybody enjoy the humor. Continues being safe and take care. Thanks again, guys.